Welcome to another monthly portfolio update. If you are stopping by for the first time, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. In this video, I will share with you how much I invested in my taxable account in October, how many shares I bought, and the value of my portfolio at the end of October. But as always, before I continue, a quick disclaimer. The information that I'm sharing is not financial advice. Before you invest in anything, please do your own research and make sure that you only invest in things that you understand. With that being said, I will dive right into my portfolio update. I will start with a quick recap of my September portfolio to show you the value of the portfolio and how many shares I had before the beginning of October. The total value of my portfolio at the end of September was $74,225.71. $74,069.44 was the market value of my investments, and $156.27 was a cash amount. The total return of my portfolio at the end of September was $19,047.66. This was plus 34.62%. These are my holdings: 2 Vanguard ETFs and 2 BlackRock ETFs. VCN is a Vanguard ETF that tracks the Canadian market. I had 102 shares of VCN at the end of September. VFV is a Vanguard ETF that tracks the S&P 500 index. This is the Canadian version of a VOO. I had 280 shares of VFV at the end of September. XEQT is a BlackRock ETF. This is an all-in-one equity ETF which holds Canadian equities, US equities, developed market equities outside of North America, and emerging market equities. If you want to hold a single equity ETF which is globally diversified, you might consider looking into XEQT. I had 474 shares of XEQT at the end of September. XUU is a BlackRock ETF that tracks the US total stock market, and I had 262 shares of XUU at the end of September. I will now show you how much I invested in October and how many shares I bought. I bought 2 shares of VCN. The cost per share was $49.87. The total cost, $99.74. This is 12% of the amount that I invested in October. I bought 2 shares of VFV. The cost per share was $142.48. The total cost, $284.95. This is 34% of the amount that I invested in October. I bought 10 shares of XEQT. The cost per share was $32.96. The total cost, $329.56. This is 40% of the amount that I invested in October. I bought 2 shares of XUU. The cost per share was $59.31. The total cost, $118.62. And this was 14% of the amount that I invested in October. In total, I bought 16 shares, all the ETFs combined, and I invested $832.87 in October. This is $47.89 more than the amount that I invested in September. As you can see, in September, I invested $784.98, and in October, $832.87. The difference is plus $47.89. The total equity of my portfolio at the end of October was $76,239.10. $76,170.62 was the market value of my investments, and $68.48 was a cash amount. The total return of my portfolio at the end of October was at $20,315.56. This was plus 36.37%. As of October the 31st, I had 104 shares of VCN, 282 shares of VFV, 484 shares of XEQT, and 264 shares of XUU. All right, let's now take a look at some quick details about each of the positions. I will start with a VCN. The closing market price on October the 31st was $49.35. The quantity of shares that I had, 104. The average price, $41.14. The book value, which is how much I have invested in VCN, was $4,278.91. The market value was $5,132.40. This was 6.73% of my portfolio. The total return of a VCN was $853.49, or 19.95%. Next, we have VFV. The closing market price on October 31st was $140.91. The quantity of shares that I had, 282. The average price, $99.17. The book value, $27,966.93. The market value was $39,736.62. This was 52.12% of my portfolio. The total return of VFV was $11,769.69, or 42.08%. Then we have XEQT. The closing market price on October the 31st was $32.72. The quantity of shares that I had, 484. The average price, $25.77. The book value was $12,474.60. The market value was $15,836.48. This was 20.77% of my portfolio. The total return for XEQT was $3,361.88, or 26.95%. Finally, we have XUU. The closing market price on October the 31st was $58.58. The quantity of shares that I had, 264. The average price, $42.17. The book value, $11,134.62. The market value was $15,465.12. This was 20.29% of my portfolio. The total return for XUU was $4,330.50, or 38.89%. The stock market ended the month of October a little bit mixed. The S&P 500 fell 0.90%, the Nasdaq slipped 0.50%, and the Dow Jones lost 1.30%. As for my portfolio, it went from 34.62% at the beginning of the month to 36.37% at the end of the month. This is an increase of 1.75%, and the amount that I invested in October was $832.87. Although I mostly hold ETFs that track the US stock market, my portfolio ended October in the green, while the major US indexes finished the month in red territory. The reason for this is the ETF I invest in are Canadian dollar-denominated ETFs that hold a basket of USD stocks. These are unhedged ETFs. If you take, for example, VFV, which is the Canadian version of VOO, it tracks the S&P 500 index. The underlying stocks of the S&P 500 trade in US dollar, and VFV, the Canadian ETF that holds the S&P 500, trades in Canadian dollar. Because of this, the fluctuation between the Canadian dollar and the US dollar affect the value of a VFV beyond the price movement of the underlying stocks. If the US dollar appreciates relative to the Canadian dollar, VFV will gain additional value beyond the movement of its underlying US stocks. On the other hand, if the Canadian dollar appreciates relative to the US dollar, VFV will lose additional value beyond the movement of its underlying US stocks. This is what happens when you invest in unhedged ETFs. Personally, I prefer buying unhedged ETFs to investing in hedged ETFs. Hedging has costs that you don't necessarily see that eat away return. Also, over the long run, the US dollar tends to outperform the Canadian dollar. By investing in an unhedged ETF like VFV, I basically invest in both the underlying stocks of the S&P 500 index and in the US dollar. You can see that since its inception in November 2012, VFV has returned on average 17.27% per year, versus 13.25% for its hedged version, VSP. This is a difference of 4% in 12 years. We will see whether this trend will continue. As someone who is investing for the long term, I will stay the course and keep investing consistently. All right, feel free to leave a comment below. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time with another update. Peace out.